In 2010, Chumlee made one careless decision that sent shockwaves through the gold and silver pawn shop and changed the mood of the place for a long time. He was handling what seemed like a basic bass guitar, the kind of item that passed through the shop every day. At first glance, it looked completely ordinary, with nothing special about it. Its pawn value was listed at just $700, hardly something worth worrying over. But everything went wrong in a split second. The guitar slipped from his hands and smashed onto the floor. When the repair estimate came back, Rick Harrison's face drained of color. The amount was so shockingly high that Chumlee stood frozen, unable to say a single word. Rick exploded with a level of anger no one in the shop had ever witnessed before. He pointed straight at the door and ordered Chumlee to leave immediately. What followed caused tension and division inside the shop for months. The incident never made it onto television, but behind the scenes, it became one of the most quietly whispered disasters in the entire history of Pawn Stars. Austin Lee. Russell was born on September 8, 1982, in a modest home in Henderson, Nevada. He was the second child in a family that struggled financially and never had much to spare. When his parents separated early in his life, the responsibility of raising the children fell almost entirely on his mother's shoulders. She worked long, exhausting hours, sometimes juggling 2 or even 3 jobs at the same time, just to make sure the bills were paid and the lights stayed on. Even when she came home tired and worn down, she did her best to make life feel normal for Austin and his siblings, Sage and Tara. Money was always tight, so she often bought old items from garage sales and resold them to earn a few extra dollars. Austin watched closely as she turned used objects into rent money. Without realizing it, he was learning the basics of value. He saw how something that looked worthless to one person could be valuable to another. Those early experiences quietly planted the first seeds of the pawnshop life he would eventually grow into during the 1990s. Austin grew up in the suburbs around Las Vegas, much like any other kid. He enjoyed video games, loved collecting toys, and spent time hanging out with friends after school. Even then, though, there was something different about him. He had a natural curiosity for interesting objects. While other kids focused on sports or cartoons, Austin wandered through garage sales with his mother and tried trading items for things he wanted more. He had an instinct for knowing what looked appealing and what someone might be willing to pay for. It wasn't serious work yet, but it was the beginning of a mindset that would follow him for the rest of his life. When he was 10 years old, Austin learned one of the hardest lessons a child can face. After saving money from small trades at school, he spent $50 on what he believed was a real Mickey Mantle baseball card. To him, $50 felt enormous, and he thought he had purchased something incredibly valuable. But when he showed the card to an older collector, the truth came out: it was fake. The disappointment hit him deeply and left a lasting sting that he remembered for years. That painful experience taught him a lesson he never forgot. Appearances can be deceiving, and authenticity matters more than anything. Later in life, he would use that childhood mistake as a warning story for others in the pawnshop around the age of 12. A friend's father looked at Austin's round face and jokingly said he resembled Chumlee the Walrus from the old Tennessee Tuxedo cartoon. Austin didn't like the nickname at first, but once a name sticks at that age, there's no escaping it. Soon, everyone started calling him Chumlee. What began as teasing slowly became part of his identity. Instead of fighting it, he leaned into it. The nickname made him memorable, and years later, it helped him stand out in the world of reality television. That walrus joke from 1994 quietly became part of his future brand. Middle school was not easy for him. Between the nickname and his appearance, he became an easy target for teasing. But during those years, he found something that helped him fit in. Pokémon cards exploded in popularity in the late 1990s. And Chumlee realized he could buy, trade, and sell them for small profits. Without knowing it, he was learning the basics of supply and demand. Kids who once teased him began coming to him for trades. Slowly, he gained confidence by doing something he was genuinely good at. He learned how to negotiate, how to read people, and how to recognize real value. By the time he turned 17, Chumlee felt finished with school. In 1999, he dropped out of Green Valley High School and chose to earn his GED instead. He took whatever jobs he could find, including work at a comic book shop where he stocked shelves and helped customers track down old issues. Comic shops were gathering places for collectors, gamers, and people who loved the same things he did. The job kept him close to a world he understood well. He learned what people were willing to pay for rare items and how demand shaped prices. For him, that shop felt more valuable than any classroom. When he was 15, he made a mistake that could have gone much worse. He tried to sell a stolen bike part at a flea market and was caught. He was grounded for months, and the experience embarrassed and frightened him. It forced him to think seriously about the kind of person he wanted to become. Instead of pushing him away from buying and selling, the incident made him more determined to do things the right way. He learned how much reputation and honesty mattered, and after that punishment, he never touched shady deals again. Everything changed when he met Corey Harrison. They were both about 8 years old and lived in the same area in Henderson. What started as a simple friendship built around video games and collectibles turned into a bond that lasted decades. Corey's family owned the gold and silver pawn shop, which opened in 1989, and Chumlee spent more and more time around that world. At the time, he had no idea that this friendship would shape his future more than anything else. In 2000, when Chumlee was 18, Corey brought him into the pawn shop just to browse old comic books. While there, Chumlee watched Rick Harrison negotiate over a vintage Atari console, eventually buying it for $150. Watching Rick haggle sparked something inside him. He realized every object had a story, and every deal was a puzzle waiting to be solved. That single moment made him want to understand how the entire business worked. By 2001, he was helping out at the shop for free. He organized shelves stacked with old Nintendo games, searched through dusty boxers of comics, and inspected collectibles for damage. One day, he spotted a fake He-Man figure that nearly fooled everyone else. When Rick confirmed it was counterfeit, he rewarded Chumlee by giving him the day's tips. That moment showed Rick that Chumlee had a natural talent for spotting both fakes and hidden gems. In 2002, Chumlee made his first real deal. A customer brought in a rare Super Mario Bros. Cartridge that Chumlee immediately recognized. He encouraged Rick to buy it for $200. Rick hesitated, but Chumlee stood firm. The cartridge later sold for $800, and Chumlee earned a $50 commission, along with a massive boost in confidence. For the first time, he felt like he truly belonged in the shop. He also witnessed the darker side of the pawn business. During one heated argument over a Civil War pistol, a customer insisted the item was real and extremely valuable. Rick disagreed, and voices quickly rose. Watching the situation unfold shook Chumlee, but it taught him how quickly deals could turn hostile and how critical knowledge and caution were in the pawn world. In 2003, when he turned 21, was officially hired at the gold and silver pawn shop. His starting pay was $8 an hour. He tested gold chains with acid kits, handled pawn tickets, and worked the counter. The job wasn't glamorous, but every day taught him something new. He didn't know it yet, but those routine years were preparing him for a future no one could have predicted by 2004. Chumlee had settled into the rhythm of the shop. Every morning at 9 a.m., trucks arrived filled with storage unit auctions. Sometimes there were hundreds of items piled together, old Hot Wheels cars, stacks of comic books, and dusty boxers full of mystery. He learned to sort quickly and Espanol value fast. The work was heavy and exhausting, but it taught him how to find treasure hidden inside junk. The grind built the foundation that later made him the shop's go-to expert on storage units. In May 2016, he accepted a plea deal. 1 felony gun charge and 1 misdemeanor drug charge. He received probation, counseling, and surrendered all weapons. If he stayed clean, the felony would be erased. The deal saved his career. By 2017, he returned to the show. Cora defended him publicly, and fans slowly accepted his quieter, more careful presence. That same year, he opened Chumlee's Candy on the boulevard beside the pawn shop. The retro candy store earned around $500,000 in its first year and became a tourist attraction. In the early 2020s. He returned with Pawn Stars Do America. By 2022, he impressed collectors with smart Pikmin and magic card deals. By 2025, his net worth reached $5 million, earning about $25,000 per episode while his businesses brought in most of his income. In his personal life, balance finally came. He got engaged to Olivia Caputo in 2018, stayed sober, continued therapy, and leaned on support groups. Those quiet changes helped him rebuild a life that felt stable again, one earned through mistakes, growth, and survival. By the chaos that once defined him had softened into discipline. He no longer chased attention or leaned into the exaggerated persona that once made him easy to laugh at. Instead, he focused on consistency, showing up on time, preparing for deals, and letting knowledge guide his decisions rather than impulse. Fans noticed the change. The jokes about him slowly faded, replaced by respect for how far he had come and how much he had learned the hard way. In 2005, he scored his first major win. A vintage 1970s Star Wars lightsaber toy came into the shop, and instead of passing it off, he trusted his instincts and paid $300 for it. Collectors tried to scare him into selling cheap, but he stood his ground. When it sold for nearly $3,000, the profit boosted the shop's monthly numbers by almost 20%. That moment made him realize he was more than just an employee. The following year brought a harsh reminder of how quickly things could fall apart. In 2006, he bought a Rolex for $1,200, believing it was real. Rick quickly identified it as fake and exploded with anger, even telling Chumlee he was fired. The mistake cost the shop $900. Chumlee apologized repeatedly and managed to sell the watch for $30 to reduce the loss. Rick eventually calmed down and allowed him to stay, but the lesson stayed with him forever. From then on, Chumlee doubled everything. By 2007, Rick began trusting him with higher value items. Chumlee authenticated and sold an Elvis Presley belt buckle for $500 and helped move the shop's inventory into a digital system, though he was known as the goofy one on TV. Inside the store, he was becoming essential. In 2008, Chumlee worked on improving his personal life. He used the small gym at the shop and lost 50 pounds, gaining confidence along the way. Rick noticed the change and raised his pay to $12 an hour. For the first time, Chumlee felt genuinely respected. When filming began in July 2009, Chumlee already had 5 years of experience. During auditions, he joked and haggled naturally over a Pac-Man arcade machine, completely unplanned. The producers loved him and cast him immediately. When the show aired in 2009 and 2010, he appeared in 10 of 16 episodes. Viewers connected with his humor and authenticity, and fan mail poured in. While fame rose quickly, behind the scenes he worked harder than anyone realized, staying up late studying antique guides and memorizing values. One day, while filming a Civil War sword appraisal, he struggled badly. He forgot his lines again and again, forcing the crew to stop and reshoot the scene 5 separate times. Each mistake embarrassed him deeply because he hated being the reason production slowed down. Still, quitting was never an option. He stayed, pushed through the frustration, and learned from every error. The persistence slowly reshaped how people saw him. Step by step, the goofy clerk label faded, replaced by someone fans respected for genuinely trying to improve. By the end of Season 2, in 2010, his entire life had shifted. His yearly income jumped from just $25,000 working at the pawn shop to $100,000 thanks to the show, with his first real paycheck. He bought a used 1995 Mustang and began building a serious video game collection, something he had always dreamed of owning. The money gave him freedom, and that freedom gave him confidence. By 2016, he had become a multimillionaire, but the earliest checks meant the most to him because they proved his life had truly changed. That same year, he also began meeting fans face to face. He signed autographs at small Las Vegas events and never rushed the people waiting in line. He always took extra time with kids and nervous collectors, making sure they felt seen. At one event, a fan handed him a rare Nintendo Zelda cartridge, valued at around $400. It was a simple gift, but it stayed with him emotionally. He kept it as a reminder of how far he had come. From sorting dusty boxers in 2004 to becoming someone admired enough to receive gifts from strangers in 2011, he surprised fans by walking into the shop with a 1920s-style Tommy gun replica he had bought for $2,500. Most viewers expected him to mess it up, but experts confirmed it was a high-quality replica worth about $5,000 when he sold it for that price. Rick Harrison smiled and offered a rare praise. Fans loved seeing him flip expectations and prove he could think independently. That single deal changed how people viewed him. Then came 2012, when he crossed over into Nickelodeon. He appeared as himself in the iCarly episode I Lost My Head. In Vegas, standing beside Rick and Corey in front of nearly 4 million young viewers, his scene leaned into his playful personality as he haggled over a prop sword just like he did in the shop. Kids started quoting him online, turning small moments into loud memes. For the first time, he felt what it meant to be recognized by people who had never watched Pawn Stars. By 2013, the show was pulling roughly 3.5 million viewers per episode, and one crossover moment stood out. He traded a bundle of duck calls for $300 during an episode featuring Duck Dynasty. The deal itself was simple, but the internet exploded. Fans loved the chaos of a pawn shop colliding with bearded hunters. His easy, fun energy carried the scene and boosted ratings for both shows. In 2014, he took a step into business ownership. He launched t-shirts under his own brand, and fans bought them fast. He sold 10,000 shirts at $20 each, earning $150,000 in profit. The money helped upgrade the shop and proved he could turn fame into real business. Some shirts were even resold online at higher prices, treated like collectibles. Everything built toward an unexpected moment in 2015. He bought an authentic Picasso sketch for $10,000. After authentication, it sold at auction for $25,000. This marked a turning point. Viewers who once laughed now watched him handle serious, high-stakes art deals. Even seasoned collectors praised him. For a brief moment, he truly felt he had earned his place. But beneath those wins were painful failures. Years before the show aired in 2008, he spent $155,000 of his own savings on what he believed was a rare upright bass. An expert later confirmed it was a complete fake. The loss wiped out everything he had saved and created tension between him and Corey Harrison. Baines learned about it later, and it became part of Pawn Stars lore, showing how quickly trust can break when money is involved. He admitted he had no business buying such an expensive instrument, and the regret haunted him for years. He stumbled again in 2012, when he overpaid for an ugly guitar during Season 5. He spent $3,500 too much, and once the guitar was appraised as fake, The shop lost $2,000. Rick scolded him on camera, and the moment became a warning about buying without knowledge. He laughed it off publicly, but privately it hurt. The following year brought another blow. In 2013, he bought 3 Rolex watches for $4,000, believing he had scored a deal. Experts later revealed all 3 were fake. The embarrassment led to a new shop rule banning him from luxury buys without expert approval. Fans joked, but the lesson was serious. Confidence without skill is dangerous. In 2014, tensions flared again when he pushed to buy an arcade game despite expert warnings. The machine was broken and cost the shop $1,500. Rick confronted him on camera, sparking heated debate among fans. The incident forced changes in how electronics were inspected. By 2015, stress and fame began affecting his health. He had gained around 30 pounds, and online trolls piled on. Memes, jokes, and comments flooded in, even from Rick on the show. Eventually, he sought therapy, using his earnings to focus on stress, self-image, and managing fame. He openly admitted his struggles, and fans connected with his honesty. The most infamous backstage incident dated back to 2010. On a quiet afternoon, he leaned a pawned upright bass against a shelf and walked away. The bass, pawned for $700 but extremely valuable, slid, hit the floor, and cracked apart. The shop froze. Repair estimates came back at $20,000. Rick sent him home immediately and demanded he cover the repairs himself. He paid out of pocket. The moment never aired, but rumors spread through staff and fan forums, becoming legendary. The owner threatened legal action. Tabloids repeated his confused quote, "I don't know what I was thinking," and lawyers stepped in to settle the matter. Rick banned him from handling instruments and forced him into mandatory training. Inside the shop, the joke finally ended. Things took a darker turn in 2016. On March 9th, police raided his Las Vegas home during a sexual assault investigation. The allegation found no evidence, but officers discovered drugs, paraphernalia, and 12 firearms, including unregistered assault rifles and a fully automatic MP5. A hidden vault and private dance room fueled tabloids. He faced 20 felony charges, posted $62,000 bail, and risked up to 30 years in prison. Episodes were paused, and fans feared the end. His appearances grew more selective. Rather than saying yes to everything, he chose conventions, charity events, and collector meets where he could connect with people who genuinely cared about the culture he loved. When fans approached him, he spoke openly about his mistakes, never pretending the road had been smooth. He told younger collectors to slow down, research first, and never confuse confidence with expertise. Those conversations mattered to him more than autographs. Behind the scenes, he continued expanding his businesses. Chumlee's Candy remained profitable, and he quietly invested in small ventures tied to pop culture, collectibles, and retro gaming. He learned to let experts handle what he didn't fully understand, a lesson paid for many times over in earlier years. The reckless buy-in that once got him in trouble was replaced by patience and planning. His relationship with Rick and Corey also evolved. The tension of the early years gave way to mutual respect, while they still teased him on camera. There was an understanding underneath it. He had earned his place, not through perfection, but through endurance. He had stayed when it would have been easier to disappear. What fans ultimately connected with wasn't the deals or the fame, but the arc of his life itself. He wasn't a polished success story. He was messy, impulsive, and often wrong, but he kept getting back up, from breaking a priceless instrument, to public humiliation, to legal trouble that nearly erased everything. He survived each chapter by confronting it instead of running from it. By the time people looked back on his journey, the title Goofy Clerk felt outdated and incomplete. His story became a reminder that growth rarely happens in straight lines, and that redemption doesn't come from avoiding failure, but from learning how to live with it, repair the damage, and move forward with humility. In the end, what defined him wasn't the mistakes that once threatened to end his career, but the quiet discipline that followed them. He rebuilt trust, reshaped his identity, and turned a life once ruled by chaos into one guided by intention. And for someone who was never expected to last, that steady, earned balance became his greatest achievement.